Beneath the fractured moon, where shadows bled into frost-kissed stone, a single whisper shattered the silence of the eternal night. Ilara's breath fogged the air as she stumbled through the whispering pines, the weight of her exile pressing like an iron collar against her throat. The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the Silverfang Mountains, carrying the distant weavos of the pack that had cast her out. She was no longer one of them, an Omega, marked by the Deuce's faint touch, but deemed too weak, too cursed, to bear the burdens of the clan. Her Alpha, the one who had once vowed protection under the blood moon, had turned away first, his eyes cold as the snow that now clung to her tattered furs. "Unfit," he had snarled, his voice echoing in the great hall where torches flickered like dying stars. The elders had nodded, their judgment swift, banishment to the forsaken wilds where the veil between worlds thinned and the forgotten stirred. She clutched the ancient tome to her chest, its leather binding cracked and stained with the ink of ages. It was the only inheritance from her mother, a pathfinder whose visions had been silenced by the pack's fear. Ilara's fingers trembled as she traced the raised symbols on the cover, a crescent moon entwined with thorns, dripping what looked like blood frozen in time. The book had been her secret solace in the dim corners of the longhouse, its pages filled with spells whispered by the Deusa herself, or so the legends claimed. But now, in the biting cold, it felt like a curse, a relic of the power she could never wield. Her feet sank into the snow with each laborious step, the chill seeping through her worn boots, numbing the ache in her heart more than her limbs. The forest closed in around her, a labyrinth of ice-laced branches that clawed at the sky. Far below, the valley where her pack dwelled glowed faintly with firelight, a distant promise of warmth she could no longer claim. Ilara paused at the edge of a frozen ravine, her breath ragged, the wind tearing at her dark hair like vengeful spirits. Why had they feared her? Her visions came in fragments, flashes of shadowed thrones and crimson eyes, but they were never clear enough to serve the pack's endless wars. A harbinger of doom, the seer had declared, her voice laced with malice. And so they had stripped her of her place, leaving her to the mercy of the wilds, where rogue alphas and worse prowled under the lunar gaze. She sank to her knees beside a cluster of jagged rocks, the tome slipping from her grasp into the snow. The moon hung low, its silver light bathing the clearing in an ethereal glow, turning the world into a canvas of whites and grays. Ilara's tears froze on her cheeks, each one a testament to the rejection that hollowed her soul. What was an Omega without her pack? A ghost, adrift in the endless winter. She wiped her face with a numb hand, her gaze falling on the book. In desperation, she flipped it open, the pages crackling like brittle bones. The words blurred before her eyes, an ancient tongue that pulled at something deep within. A dormant spark, perhaps the Deuce's gift her mother had sworn she possessed. Her lips moved of their own accord, forming the syllables of a forgotten spell. It was meant for summoning light in the darkest hour, or so the faded script promised. But as she read aloud, the air thickened, charged with an unseen force. By the blood of the eternal night, by the thorn that binds the veil, awaken what sleeps in shadowed might. The words tasted of iron and frost on her tongue, and a tremor ran through the ground beneath her. The snow swirled in unnatural eddies, rising like spirits drawn to her voice. Ilara's heart pounded, a wild drum against her ribs, fear and curiosity warring within her. Had she invoked something forbidden? The pack's tales warned of such rituals, echoes of old pacts with beings long buried, alphas who ruled not packs, but eternal shadows. From the depths of the ravine, a low rumble echoed, like the growl of the earth itself awakening. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ice below, and a gust of frigid wind carried the scent of aged stone and something metallic, blood, ancient and potent. Ilara scrambled back, her pulse thundering in her ears, but she could not tear her eyes away. The moon seemed to pulse brighter, casting long shadows that twisted into forms almost alive. Then, from the frozen crevice, a figure emerged, slow and deliberate, as if pulled from the grave by her unwitting call. He rose like a specter forged in nightmare, his form cloaked in tattered black velvet that blended with the night. Tall and imposing, with skin pale as moonlit marble, he moved with a grace that belied the power rippling beneath. Crimson eyes gleamed from beneath a mane of raven hair, locking onto her with an intensity that stole her breath. This was no ordinary wanderer. He bore the mark of kingship, a crown of thorns etched in silver upon his brow, and fangs that glinted subtly in the lunar light. The Vampire King, whispered the old legends, the Alpha who had fallen centuries ago, betrayed by his own bloodline, sealed away in eternal slumber to prevent his dominion over the shadowed realms. Ilara's body froze, not from the cold, but from the instinctive pull that surged between them. An Omega's bond, raw and unbidden, recognizing the fractured soul of an Alpha long denied redemption. He stepped fully into the light, his gaze never leaving hers, and in that moment the world narrowed to the space between them, the snow, the moon, the blood scent lingering on the wind. "You," he murmured, his voice a velvet rumble that echoed through her bones. "My long-lost bride, have called me from the void." The words hung in the air, a promise and a peril, as the first flakes of a gathering storm began to fall. Ilara's hand instinctively touched the tome, now warm against the chill, its symbols glowing faintly. What had she unleashed? In the heart of exile, under the watchful eye of the Deusa, her fate intertwined with his, a king risen from guilt and shadow, seeking not conquest, but the mercy only she might offer. But as his eyes darkened with unspoken pain, she wondered if the spell had freed him, or bound them both to a destiny drenched in blood and fire. Ilara's world tilted on the edge of that single word, bride, a title that wrapped around her like chains forged in forgotten forges, both alluring and suffocating. The Vampire King's crimson gaze held her captive, not with force, but with the weight of centuries etched into his soul, a melancholy that mirrored her own exile. The snow continued its silent descent, veiling the pines in a shroud of white, while the wind whispered secrets through the branches, carrying the faint, acrid tang of approaching peril. She could sense it now, an undercurrent in the air, like the pack's distant howls sharpening into pursuit. Her spell had torn the veil, and echoes of it rippled outward, drawing eyes that hungered for the power she had unwittingly unleashed. He extended a hand, pale and veined with shadows, his fingers long and unyielding as ancient roots. "Come," he said, his voice a low timbre that resonated in her chest, stirring the dormant instincts of her Omega blood. It was no command, but an invitation laced with urgency, his eyes flicking to the tree line where shapes stirred. Dark silhouettes against the moon's glow, rogue hunters from the shadowed clans, drawn by the rupture in the eternal night. Ilara hesitated, her fingers tightening around the tome, its leather warm now, pulsing like a second heart against her ribs. The symbols on its cover seemed to writhe faintly, the thorn-entwined crescent drinking in the lunar light, a beacon she could not extinguish. Fear clawed at her, but so did curiosity, that treacherous spark that had led her to utter the spell. She placed her hand in his, and the contact was electric, a jolt of cold fire that raced up her arm, binding them in a thread of raw connection. His skin was cool, yet alive with an undercurrent of heat, the blood of his vampiric lineage humming beneath. He pulled her to her feet, with effortless strength, his body a shield of lean muscle cloaked in the remnants of regal finery, now frayed by time. Together, they plunged into the denser thicket, the snow crunching underfoot like brittle bones, the wind masking their flight with its relentless howl. The forest swallowed them, a labyrinth of ice-sheathed trunks and frozen underbrush that clawed at their clothes. Ilara's breath came in sharp gasps, her legs burning from the pace, but his presence steadied her, his hand never releasing hers. "They come for the rift you opened," he murmured, his words weaving through the rush of branches. "The spell. It calls to those who crave dominion over the veil. I was sealed to guard it, betrayed by kin who feared my mercy would weaken their thrones." His voice carried the ache of old wounds. A king's guilt laid bare, not for conquest denied, but for the lives he could not save, the pack he had led into shadow rather than light. She glanced at him, their faces illuminated by slivers of moonlight piercing the canopy. His features were chiseled, aristocratic, with high cheekbones and lips curved in eternal sorrow, fangs a subtle gleam when he spoke. Yet beneath the predator's allure lay a fragility, a fracture in the alpha's unyielding facade. Ilara felt it echo in her own soul, the rejection that had hollowed her, the visions that marked her as other. "Why call me bride?" she whispered, dodging a low-hanging bough heavy with frost, the cold biting into her skin like accusations. He slowed, pulling her behind a cluster of boulders glazed in ice, their surfaces etched with runes long faded. The distant snarls grew louder now, weavos that twisted into something inhuman, the hunters closing in with the precision of wolves scenting blood. "In the old pacts," he replied, his breath stirring the air without fog, a testament to his undead essence. The Dusa bound souls across the veil. "You read the words that were meant for me alone, words etched in my blood before the betrayal. Your voice. It awakened not just my form, but the memory of what was lost." His eyes softened, crimson depths swirling with unspoken longing. But he turned away, scanning the shadows. "We cannot linger. The refuge lies ahead, a cavern veiled by the mountains, where the moon's light bends and hides." They pressed on, the terrain steepening into a sheer incline, rocks slick under the fresh snow. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together fragments from the tome's pages. The vampire king, Draven of the Eternal Thorn, ruler of the shadowed pacts before the Great Schism. Legends spoke of his fall, a war where mercy had cost him his throne, his own brother sealing him in ice to claim the crown. And now, risen by her hand, he sought not vengeance, but something purer, a redemption that her presence stirred, instinctive and denied. She rationalized it as survival's illusion, the bond of Omega to Alpha, a cruel trick of the blood. Yet her heart betrayed her, warming at the protectiveness in his stride. A snarl erupted close behind, shattering the illusion of escape. From the underbrush burst 3 figures, cloaked in ragged furs, eyes glowing with feral hunger, rogue shifters, outcasts drawn to the spell's echo, their forms half man, half beast, claws extended like scythes. One lunged, its breath hot and rank, but Draven whirled, interposing himself with a growl that vibrated the air, deep and primal. He moved like liquid shadow, fangs bared, striking with fists that cracked bone and sent the attacker sprawling into the snow, blood blooming red against white, a stark, visceral bloom that mirrored the tome's frozen droplets. Ilara pressed against the rock, her pulse thundering, but instinct surged within her. She clutched the book tighter, its warmth spreading through her veins, and whispered a fragment of ward from its pages, her voice trembling yet resolute. A shimmer of silver light erupted from the symbols, coiling like thorns to ensnare the second assailant, binding him in icy vines that cracked and held. The third faltered, fear flickering in its eyes, before fleeing into the night. Draven turned to her, surprise etching his features, mingled with a dawning awe. "Your gift. It blooms in crisis." Panting, they crested the ridge, the cavern's maw yawning before them, a jagged mouth framed by hoarfrost, its depths promising shelter. Inside, the air was still, laced with the mineral scent of stone and distant water, lit faintly by phosphorescent veins in the walls that pulsed like captured moonlight. They collapsed against the far wall, The entrance sealed by a cascade of ice, Draven summoned with a gesture, his power weaving the cold into a barrier. In the dim glow, Ilara met his gaze, the space between them charged with the aftermath of battle. Their shared breath, the faint tremor in her limbs, the way his hand lingered near hers. Empathy unfurled like a fragile bloom in the frost, her pain recognizing his. The exile's solitude meeting the king's eternal isolation. "We are both adrift," she said softly, tracing the tome's cover, the thorns seeming to pulse in rhythm with their hearts. He nodded, his fingers brushing hers, a touch that sparked not fear, but the first threads of a bond forged in refuge and necessity. Outside, the storm raged, weavos fading into the wind, but within, under the cavern's lunar veil, something deeper stirred. A connection resisted, yet inevitable, born of fear and curiosity entwined. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. In the cavern's hushed embrace, where the phosphorescent veins traced veins of captured moonlight across the stone, Ilara felt the weight of the world settle into her bones like fresh fallen snow. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient secrets, the distant drip of water echoing like the slow toll of a forgotten bell. Draven sat across from her, his form a silhouette of shadowed elegance against the glowing walls, his crimson eyes reflecting the faint light in pools of restrained fire. The barrier of ice he had woven at the entrance hummed softly, a fragile ward against the storm's fury and the hunter's lingering snarls, but inside, the silence pressed heavier, demanding truths neither was ready to voice. She leaned against the rough-hewn wall, the tome cradled in her lap like a sleeping child, its leather cover still warm to the touch, the thorn-entwined crescent pulsing faintly as if alive. Ilara's fingers traced the raised symbols absent-mindedly, her mind a whirlwind of fragments, the pack's cold rejection, the spell's reckless utterance, the king's unexpected rise. His presence filled the space, not oppressively, but with a quiet gravity that tugged at her omega instincts, urging her to yield, to seek solace in the strength he embodied. Yet she resisted, rationalizing the pull as mere survival's echo, the bond a illusion born of isolation. "You speak of pacts and brides as if they were etched in fate," she said at last, her voice a thread in the dimness, laced with the chill that had seeped into her soul. "But I am no queen, no savior. I am exiled refuse, my visions nothing but shattered dreams." Draven's gaze softened, the melancholy lines of his face deepening in the lunar glow. He shifted closer, his movements fluid, deliberate, like a shadow uncoiling from night. The scent of him, aged velvet and faint copper, blood long stilled yet potent, mingled with the cavern's minerals, stirring something primal within her. "Exile does not define the soul, Ilara," he murmured, his voice a velvet rumble that resonated through the stone, vibrating against her skin. "It reveals it. I was king once, bound by duty to a realm of endless shadow, where mercy was deemed weakness. My brother, he saw my hesitation in the face of war's hunger and sealed me away, fearing the throne would crumble under compassion's weight. Centuries in the void, guarding the veil's secrets until your voice pierced it, not as a conqueror, but as one seeking redemption." She met his eyes, the crimson depths drawing her in, mirroring the guilt that had hollowed her own heart. The pack had cast her out for her fragmented visions, glimpses of bloodied thrones and thorn-wreathed crowns that foretold ruin, not glory. What strength was there in seeing without shaping? Her hand trembled on the tome, and as if sensing her turmoil, the symbols flared brighter, a soft silver light spilling from the pages like liquid moonlight. Ilara gasped, pulling back. But the glow intensified, weaving tendrils of ethereal mist that coiled around her fingers, warm and insistent. The air hummed with power, the cavern's walls seeming to breathe in rhythm, the phosphorescent veins pulsing faster, syncing with her quickening breath. "What is this?" she whispered, fear threading her words, but beneath it, a spark of wonder ignited. The mist thickened, forming visions in the space between them, ethereal scenes flickering like firelight on water. She saw Draven as he once was, a young king on a throne of obsidian and frost, his hand extended in mercy to a fallen enemy amid a battlefield strewn with crimson snow. Then the betrayal, his brother's blade at his back, sealing him in ice while the pack howled in divided loyalty. The images shifted to her own life, her mother's final vision, whispering of a daughter who would mend the veil's tear, her fingers tracing the same thorn crescent on Alara's palm as a hidden mark. It burned now, a faint heat blooming on her skin, the symbol mirroring the tomes. Draven leaned forward, his breath catching, an unnatural hitch for one so eternal, as recognition dawned in his eyes. "The Pathfinder's gift," he breathed, awe etching his features, his pale hand reaching out to hover near hers, not touching, but close enough for the mist to bridge them. "You are the key, Alara. The spell you read was no accident. It was the Deuce's weave, binding the forgotten bride to the fallen king. Your visions. They are not curses, but threads of destiny, revealing paths where others see only shadow. I was sealed not just to guard the veil, but to await one who could heal its fracture. Your voice awakened me, but your blood, your sight, will redeem what was broken." The revelation crashed over her like a winter gale, tearing at the walls she had built around her shattered self. Empathy surged, hot and unbidden, her heart aching with the echo of his ancient pain, the king's guilt for lives lost to his mercy, the isolation of eternal watch. Yet doubt clawed at her edges. Was this bond true, or another chain of expectation? The mist swirled higher, showing a future glimpse. Thorn vines encircling a united realm, blood and fire yielding to silver light, but shadowed by a choice, war's throne or compassion's exile. Alara's chest tightened, the air growing thick with the scent of blooming frost roses, illusory yet tangible, their petals unfurling in the glow. He withdrew slightly, his expression a mask of restrained longing, the weight of his duty pressing like unseen thorns. "I do not claim you as possession," he said, voice low, laced with the sorrow of one who had lost everything to power's games. "But in you, I see the proof that redemption is not myth. The veil thins further. The hunters outside are but the first. They seek to exploit the rift, to twist the shadows into weapons. Your gift could seal it or unleash what sleeps beyond. The choice is yours. Walk away and let the void reclaim me, or stand as the bridge between worlds." She closed the tome, the light fading to a soft ember, leaving her skin tingling with newfound power. The cavern felt smaller now, intimate, the silence broken only by the storm's muffled roar and their shared breaths, hers ragged with revelation, his steady yet haunted. In that moment, under the bent moonlight's veil, Alara felt the stirrings of something profound, not immediate surrender, but a tentative acceptance, her exile transforming into purpose. Yet the dilemma lingered, sharp as thorns. What was strength if not choosing to heal a king who mirrored her own wounds? Outside, the wind howled promises of greater trials, Uivos rising like a chorus of judgment, while within the first fragile trust took root, binding them in the dance of destiny and doubt. The cavern's glow lingered like a fading dream, the mist from Alara's awakening gift dissipating into wisps that clung to the stone walls, leaving behind a chill that seeped deeper than winter's bite. Her palm still burned with the thorn crescent mark, a faint silver outline etched into her skin, pulsing in time with the tome's subdued warmth. She stared at it, the symbol a bridge between her fractured visions and the king's ancient curse, its thorns a reminder that power always drew blood. Draven watched her, his crimson eyes shadowed with a reverence that bordered on despair, the weight of his eternal vigil pressing against the fragile piece they had carved from the storm. "You feel it now," he said, his voice a low murmur that wove through the dripping silence, stirring the air like a distant weavo. The Deuce's thread, binding the exiled to the fallen. I was not meant to rise alone. The spell demanded a voice pure of ambition, one that saw mercy where others saw weakness. He reached out, his fingers hovering near her marked hand, the space between them charged with unspoken tension, a pull that her Omega blood resisted, rationalizing it as the echo of survival, yet her heart betrayed her with its quickened rhythm. The cavern's phosphorescent veins dimmed slightly, casting his face in half-light, highlighting the faint scars that marred his pale skin, relics of battles fought not for glory, but for the souls he could not condemn. Alara withdrew her hand, curling it against the tome, the leather's texture grounding her amid the swirl of revelation. The visions had stripped her bare, exposing the lie of her weakness. Her fragmented sights were no curse, but a pathfinder's legacy, woven to mend the veil that separated the living packs from the shadowed realms. Her mother's whispers echoed in her mind, tales of a daughter who would speak the forgotten words, healing the rifts born of betrayal. Yet doubt coiled like frost in her veins. How could she, the rejected Omega, hold the key to a king's redemption? The pack's scorn replayed in her thoughts, their elders' voices cold as the snow that had buried her hopes. Unfit, harbinger, exile. "This mark, it changes nothing," she whispered, her breath fogging faintly in the cooling air. "I am still the one they cast into the wilds. Your destiny cannot hinge on my broken sight." Draven's expression fractured, the melancholy of centuries etching deeper lines across his brow. He rose slowly, his tattered velvet cloak whispering against the stone, and paced the cavern's confines, his steps measured, like a shadow testing its chains. The barrier of ice at the entrance cracked faintly under the storm's assault, a reminder that refuge was fleeting, the hunter's snarls weaving through the wind like threads of impending doom. "Broken?" he echoed, turning to her with a gaze that pierced the dimness, crimson depths swirling with the fire of old guilts. "Every king I knew sought power unbroken, thrones forged in blood without remorse. I faltered once, sparing a rival's kin in the crimson fields under the blood moon, believing compassion could forge a lasting realm. My brother twisted it to weakness, sealing me here to hoard the Veil's secrets for his wars. But your voice tore through the void, not with conquest's roar, but with a spell of light. The Deuce chose you because rejection honed your mercy, sharpened it like thorns guarding a rose." The words hung heavy, stirring the air with their truth, and Alara felt the mark flare again, hotter now, drawing forth another vision unbidden. She gasped as the cavern blurred, the phosphorescent light intensifying into a cascade of silver, painting the walls with ethereal scenes. Before them unfolded the Veil's fracture, a shimmering tear in the fabric of night, beyond which twisted realms of shadow stirred, ancient entities with eyes like embers reaching toward the living world. Draven's past replayed in vivid strokes, his coronation under a thorn-crowned moon, the pact sworn in blood to guard the divide, his mercy in the war-torn valleys where snow ran red, and the betrayal's sting, his brother's dagger etched with the same crescent, plunging into the ice that entombed him. Then her own thread wove in. As a child, her fingers tracing the tome's symbols under her mother's watchful eye, visions of a risen king calling her name, the veil mending not by force, but by a union of wounded souls. The vision crested, showing the peril ahead, the hunters massing in the storm, led by a figure cloaked in iron and deceit. Draven's brother reborn in ambition, seeking to widen the rift for dominion. Alara's breath hitched, the images searing her mind with their clarity, the scent of blood and frost roses flooding the cavern, tangible as the cold stone beneath her. She collapsed forward, Draven catching her gently, his arms a cool cradle that steadied the tremor in her limbs. For the first time, she did not pull away. The contact was a conduit, her gift flowing between them, revealing his core, not the monster of legends, but an alpha etched with ethical scars, his guilt a crown heavier than thorns. "You are the key," he breathed against her hair, his voice raw with awe and longing, the first crack in his melancholic armor. "Not to my throne, but to the balance. The veil weakens. Without your sight to guide the ceiling, shadows will consume the packs, turning mercy to ash. I was cursed to wait, but you were born to choose." Empathy bloomed fierce within her, a warmth against the cavern's chill, her exile's pain mirroring his eternal isolation. The bond tugged insistent now, resisted yet acknowledged, rationalized as destiny's cruel weave rather than love's illusion. Outside, the storm howled louder, Weavos sharpening into a chorus of pursuit, the wind carrying the metallic tang of blood from distant clashes. Rogue shifters clashing with unseen foes, the rift's echo drawing war to their threshold. Alara straightened in his hold, the tome falling open in her lap, its pages glowing with the thorn crescent's light, symbols dancing like fireflies in the lunar veins. "If I am the bridge," she said, her voice steadying, laced with the philosophy of one reborn in revelation, "then what is redemption, if not facing the shadows we both carry? The pack rejected me for seeing too much. Your kin sealed you for feeling too deeply. Together, perhaps we seal more than the veil." Draven's eyes met hers, crimson fire tempered by hope, the space between them shrinking as trust solidified, fragile as ice yet unyielding. The mark on her palm cooled, a quiet affirmation, but the vision's warning lingered, the confrontation loomed, betrayal's blade honed by the moon's unforgiving gaze. In that suspended moment, under the cavern's bent light, Alara embraced her gift, not as burden, but as purpose, the key turning in the lock of her soul. Yet the dilemma whispered. Could she heal a king without losing herself to the thorns of his past? The storm raged on, promising judgment, while within, the first embers of alliance flickered, born of revelation's unyielding truth. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. The storm's fury crested like a beast unchained, its winds battering the cavern's ice barrier until cracks spiderwebbed across the frozen veil, letting in shards of howling night. Ilara's breath caught as the phosphorescent glow flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like specters across Draven's face, illuminating the resolve hardening in his crimson eyes. The revelation's warmth had ebbed, leaving her marked palm throbbing with a dull ache, the thorn crescent a brand that whispered of choices yet to be forged in blood and fire. Outside, the Weavos sharpened into a cacophony, rogue shifters and something darker, their snarls laced with the metallic tang of betrayal's approach. The veil's fracture pulsed in her visions, a wound in the night sky visible even through the stone, drawing the past like moths to a dying flame. Draven rose, his tattered velvet whispering against the damp floor, every movement a testament to the king's fractured grace. "They come," he said, voice low and resonant, carrying the weight of centuries' vigilance. "My brother, Eldrick, stirs the shadows he once used to bury me. He senses the rifts widening, your gift amplifying it like a siren's call. The packs converge, not for justice, but for the power to twist mercy into chains." His hand extended toward her, not in command, but in shared peril, the cool press of his fingers against hers, igniting that resisted spark. the Omega's instinctive tether to his alpha soul, rationalized as necessity's cruel jest, yet undeniable in its pull. Alara stood, the tome clutched like a shield, its pages rustling with faint, ethereal winds that carried the scent of frost-bitten roses and spilled blood. The cavern trembled as the barrier shattered in a cascade of glittering shards, the storm surging in with icy claws that tore at her furs and stung her skin. Through the breach, figures emerged from the blizzard. Eldrick at their fore, his form a twisted echo of Draven's nobility, cloaked in iron-laced armor etched with mocking crescents, his eyes burning with the same crimson hue, but feral, unrepentant. Flanking him were remnants of the Silverfang pack, her former kin, their faces contorted in recognition and scorn, led by the Alpha who had rejected her, his snarl a blade to her heart. "Traitor's whore!" he spat, his voice cutting through the gale. "You've unleashed the monster we sealed for the greater good." The confrontation unfolded in visceral strokes. The snow-churned ground, a canvas of white-stained red as claws met flesh. Draven surged forward, a shadow unleashed, his fangs bared in a growl that shook the pines, felling two rogues with strikes precise and merciless, bones cracking like thunder under the moon's indifferent gaze. Blood arced through the air, warm and coppery, splattering Alara's cheek as she backed against the cavern wall, her visions fracturing into chaos. Flashes of Eldrick's blade, the pack's divided loyalties, the veil tearing wider to swallow realms in shadow. The air thickened with the reek of exertion and iron, winds whipping flakes into a blinding veil that blurred friend from foe. Eldrick lunged at his brother, their clash a symphony of steel and fury, swords drawn from scabbards hidden in cloaks, ringing against each other like judgments from the Deusa herself. "You were always the weak one, Draven," Eldrick sneered, his blade grazing Draven's shoulder, drawing a line of dark blood that steamed in the cold. "Mercy cost us the throne. I sealed you to save the packs from your folly. Now this Omega witch widens the rift. Hand her over, and I'll grant you the Void's peace." Draven parried, his movements a dance of restrained power, eyes flickering with the guilt that had haunted him through eternities. He spared a glance at Alara, crimson depths pleading not for aid, but for her to flee, to choose freedom over the thorns binding them. But she could not. The mark on her palm ignited, silver light erupting from her skin like lunar fire. Coiling through the fray to ensnare a Silverfang warrior, mid-leap, thorns of mist binding him in icy agony. Her former Alpha whirled toward her, recognition twisting into rage. "You were nothing." But her vision pierced him, revealing the rot in his soul. Ambition fed by Eldrick's whispers, the pack's exile of her a political gambit to appease the shadowed alliance. Empathy warred with fury in her chest, the pain of rejection, a fresh wound. Yet her gift demanded more, truth over vengeance. "What is loyalty?" she cried, voice carrying over the storm's roar. "If it bows to betrayal's crown?" The words wove into her power, the light flaring to blind the attackers, forcing a momentary retreat into the tree line. Draven pressed the advantage, driving Eldrick back with a ferocity born of long-buried wrath, their blades locking in a clash that sparked against the snow. "You twisted my mercy into your excuse for tyranny," Draven growled, his voice raw, blood trickling from his wound to freeze in crimson rivulets down his arm. The Deusa's pact was balance, not domination, the Veil Guards all, not just our bloodline. Eldrick laughed, a hollow sound swallowed by the wind, countering with a slash that Draven dodged, the king's form blurring into shadow. Ilara's heart pounded, the bond tugging insistent now, her rationalizations crumbling under the weight of shared scars, his guilt a mirror to her exile, their fates entwined in the moon's unforgiving light. The battle crested in a frozen clearing beyond the cavern, the group spilling out into the open where the moon hung bloated and thorn-veiled, casting the scene in stark silvers and reds. Her pack encircled them, Weavos rising in a chorus of judgment, but fractures showed, some eyes wavering, whispers of doubt rippling through the ranks. Eldrick rallied them with promises of power, his blade aimed at Draven's heart, but Alara stepped forward. The tome open in her hands, symbols glowing like embers in the night. A vision seized her, the choice laid bare: forgive the betrayer and seal the veil with compassion's light, risking war's backlash, or unleash her full gift in retribution, claiming freedom at the cost of the realm's balance. Love or liberty, pardon or perdition, the dilemma clawed at her soul, thorns drawing first blood from her spirit. Draven faltered under Eldrick's assault, a gash opening across his chest, blood blooming dark against his velvet, yet he fought on, ethical fire in his eyes refusing the kill. Ilara's cry shattered the fray. Enough! Her power surging in a wave of silver thorns that parted the combatants, coiling around Eldrick's sword arm, forcing him to his knees. The pack stilled, breaths ragged in the sudden hush, the wind carrying the scent of blood and frost, the moon witnessing her stand. In that suspended breath, Alara faced her past. The Alpha who discarded her, the elders who feared her sight, and Draven's shadowed legacy, the brother who sealed redemption's door. What was strength, if not choosing mercy amid the storm's teeth? Her heart ached with the weight. The bond to Draven no longer resisted, but embraced in tentative fire. Yet the choice loomed, a precipice of moral fire where one step could crown or consume. The standoff held, fragile as thawing ice, Weavos fading into the night's vast silence, but the air hummed with the promise of deeper trials, the veil's tier widening, shadows stirring beyond, demanding her verdict under the thorn-crowned sky. The moon hung like a thorn-crowned sentinel above the frozen clearing, its silver light fracturing across the blood-streaked snow, turning the world into a mosaic of mercy and malice. Ilara stood at the precipice, her marked palm outstretched, the silver thorns of her power coiling like living vines around Eldrick's kneeling form, their tips drawing pinpricks of crimson from his iron-clad arm. The air thrummed with the aftermath of fury, the metallic tang of spilled blood mingling with the crisp bite of wind-swept frost, distant weavos echoing from the pines like the lament of shattered oaths. Her heart thundered, a wild cadence against her ribs, the tome heavy in her other hand, its pages fluttering as if breathing the night's confessions. Draven knelt nearby, chest heaving, the gash across his torso weeping dark rivulets that froze in jagged patterns against his pale skin, his crimson eyes locked on her with a vulnerability that pierced deeper than any blade. The pack encircled them, breaths ragged plumes in the chill, their faces a tapestry of doubt and defiance. Her former alpha's snarl twisted into uncertainty, the elders' gazes flickering between the brothers, weighing the cost of old alliances against the rift's ominous pulse in the sky. The veil tore wider now, a jagged scar of shadow bleeding into the stars, whispering promises of devouring realms, ancient hungers stirring with eyes like embers in the void. Alara felt it all in her bones, her visions no longer fragments but a relentless tide, crashing with the philosophy of her rebirth. What was redemption, if not the choice to heal where hatred demanded blood? The bond to Draven tugged insistent, no longer a resisted whisper, but a flame kindled in the storm's heart, love as proof, forged in the crucible of their shared wounds, not a crown to claim, but a scar to bear together. Eldrick struggled against the thorns, his laughter a ragged bark swallowed by the gale. "Foolish girl," he rasped, crimson eyes mirroring his brother's but devoid of light, twisted by ambition's frost. "You think mercy mends thrones. I sealed him to save us." His softness invited the shadows. "Kill me, or watch the veil swallow your precious pack." His words clawed at her, stirring the echo of her exile, the pack's rejection a cold echo in her soul. She saw it in flashes, the great hall's torches flickering as they banished her, the Alpha's indifferent gaze, the seer's venomous decree. Freedom tempted her. Release the thorns. Let Eldrick fall to Draven's fangs. Claim liberty from the chains of destiny and walk into the wilds alone. Her gift a solitary light unburdened by kings and betrayals. But Draven's voice cut through, low and etched with eternal ache, his hand pressing against the snow to rise, blood staining white to red. Elara, do not become what they made us fear. His eyes held hers. The melancholy of his guilt laid bare, not for the power he lost, but for the mercy that had cost him everything, the lives he spared now haunting him like ghosts in the wind. In that gaze, she saw her own reflection, the Omega broken by scorn, reborn not in vengeance, but in the quiet strength of choosing compassion over the throne's allure. The wind howled, carrying the scent of frost roses blooming illusory in the snow, their petals unfurling as her power swelled, the thorn crescent on her palm, blazing silver, sinking with the tome's glow. The visions crested one final time. A united realm under the moon's balanced gaze, shadows tamed, not by war but by union. Her hand in his sealing the veil with blood mingled in ritual fire, sacrifice of pride. Cure through forgiveness, a love that transcended hierarchies, proving redemption's truth. Her breath steadied, the cold air filling her lungs like a vow. Strength is not in the blade's edge, she whispered, the words a philosophy woven into the night, but in the hand that lowers it. The thorns retracted, coiling back into her skin with a sting that drew her own blood, a single drop falling to the snow where it sizzled, merging with Draven's in a crimson bloom under the lunar light. Eldrick staggered free, surprise fracturing his snarl, but she turned to the pack, her voice rising clear and unyielding. The deuce's weave demands balance. Betrayal's crown crumbles under mercy's weight. Exile me again if you must, but witness this. The veil heals not through dominion, but through the wounds we share. Her former alpha faltered, the elders murmuring, fractures widening in their ranks as doubt seeded like wind-scattered seeds. Draven rose fully, closing the distance in a fluid step, his wounded form a testament to endurance, the gash across his chest knitting slowly under the moon's touch, her presence the catalyst. He took her hand, the contact a surge of cool fire, their blood mingling on their palms, the thorn crescent symbols aligning in a pulse of shared light. The veil responded, the tear knitting with threads of silver mist, shadows receding with reluctant howls, the air lightening as if the night itself exhaled. Eldrick backed away, his forces scattering into the storm, the wind claiming their weavos as echoes of a fallen era. In the hush that followed, Elara leaned into Draven's embrace, the bond no longer rationalized, but accepted, a union born of choice, her exile transmuted into purpose, his guilt into grace. They stood together, the tome closing with a soft sigh, its symbols dimming to embers, the frost roses fading into the snow as rebirth dawned. The moon softened, thorns veiled in gentle silver, bathing them in a light that promised not endless winter, but a spring forged in fire and blood. Ilara's heart, once hollowed by rejection, beat now with the rhythm of redemption, love as the ultimate proof, a king's wounds healed by an Omega's unyielding mercy. In the distance, the pack's fires flickered, not as distant taunts, but as potential beacons, the wilds no longer a grave, but a path forward, entwined. Under the eternal night, they walked from the clearing, hands linked, the wind whispering benedictions, their shadows merging into one, a destiny chosen, not imposed, where every scar became a crown of light. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe, because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.